Hello. It's been a pleasure having been invited here. I am Kamsime Rachel, a registration officer from Uganda Registration. Thank you, Innovation Uganda, Startup Uganda, for engaging URSB in sensitizing people about formalization of their businesses, because it all starts at URSB. Without formalizing your businesses, your business cannot thrive. It cannot grow to a certain tune. I am from the Business Directorate, where it all happens. Briefly, Uganda Registration Services Bureau is a semi-autonomous organization with a big mandate. We derive our mandate from the URSB Act. We gained our self-autonomy in 2010, and we have a wider mandate of registering businesses, registering companies. We also officiate marriages. In case there are spouses who are ready, they come before a registrar of marriages and they get wedded. Even when they want to wed outside the premises of a church, we can license them and gazette that particular place so that they can hold their marriages. That is why you see that so many marriages are being, in case a business is struggling, we can seamlessly wind it up or close it. We can also give advice, prudent advice, to a certain business that is struggling so that they stay afloat. With Uganda Registration Services Bureau, we also make sure that anybody who has movable property, for example, a boda, even produce from your farm, can be used as collateral between the borrower and the lender. We also have the IP mandate. Under the intellectual property mandate, we make sure that we register all the IP rights. For example, the trademarks, the patents, the Copyright Act, we all under the IP. So I'm glad to take you through the business formalization. Next slide, please. Under business formalization, we have 3 types of vehicles. One can use a sole proprietorship, that is a business name. This is basically to identify you in the business market. It is just a name that identifies your service from the other person's service. So anybody can come to URSB and register a business name. It's a one-man business, basically. One can have a name reserved as their business name. For example, if I'm called Rachel and I want to open up a salon, I can say Rachel Salon Garage. If that name is available in our database, one goes through to our search engine, opens a search engine and verifies whether that name exists or not. After the name has passed the test of desirability, we go ahead and issue with that name. But the process is a bit tedious because most people come with names that are already similar to our database. Most people come with names that have political connotations. Some people have names that are inclined to particular countries. It must be a generic name. It must identify your business. It must build a brand and a reputation for your business. Therefore, if the name passes the desirability test, we go ahead and advise that client to download a form that is called a statement of particulars. All this is done all online, all digital. You go to our website, www.ursb.go.ug. You go to e-services. You download a form called a statement of particulars, where you fill in both your names, your identification, a copy of identification, where your business is going to be situated, and therefore you submit it at the URSB portal. After 2 days, we shall get back to you and issue with the certificate of registration. This only pays 24,000 shillings. What the challenge we are facing as URSB is that most of you are using the memorandum and articles of association. This basically lay down the nitty-gritty as schools. After COVID, they come and tell us we want to register our schools, which are already operational, but without formalizing those very schools. Remember, the school has built a reputation in the market. Somebody has children or pupils. They even have students. They've accrued payment for uniforms. So everybody is associating with that particular school. So if one comes to URSB and they want to register, but the name already exists, it's already a challenge. They are constrained because they can no longer trade in that very name, since it already exists with somebody who formalized their business with URSB. In case you want to obtain credit from any financial institution, the first criteria they ask of you is the certificate of registration or incorporation. So you cannot operate outside the ambits of the law. The banking institutions also want that your business is legitimized with Uganda Registered Services Bureau. Thirdly, we have seen people operate outside the ambits, the borders of Uganda. You cannot now trade your exports outside Uganda, even if it's Sudan, even if it's Rwanda, with the East African Commission. The first requirement is your business being formalized with Uganda Registration Services Bureau. So the benefits are all enormous. You cannot start a small startup, even if you want to take your produce to a small supermarket. UNBS has to certify that product. Without a certificate, UNBS will not issue with that mark. Without a certificate from URSB, you will not be able to obtain a trading license. Within the greater metropolitan of Kampala, you cannot operate without a trading license. You cannot operate without a TIN number. So, first things first, please come to URSB and register your business. Thirdly, we have seen people open up a one-man company. These are called a single-member company. One can decide that I'm trading alone, and you open what we call a single-member company. Here, a one person can own all the shares in a company. In case you've lost trust with people, you can only appoint what we call a nominee and alternate director in a certain form called a Form 1. So with this single member, a shareholder owns 100% of the shareholding in a particular company. So what we want of you is to request URSB that this person will act on my behalf in case I'm demised, and the other person will act on my behalf in case I'm not in the country. Therefore, that connotes that this is a single member company. You will file other forms as need be when you're going through the process of incorporation, and thereafter we shall issue with a certificate of incorporation. We have also seen people registering investment clubs. Most banking institutions want certificate of incorporation, but as URSB would advise you to start with a constitution. In case members come together with a common interest and they want to invest to accrue a profit, we advise them to register a company limited by shares. Because remember, you're going to invest and accrue a certain profit. That takes you to a profit-generating company. But if it's a non-profit, for example, a social enterprise, you can register yourselves as a company limited by guarantee. A company limited by guarantee is a non-profit company. It is a charitable organization. That is why we see companies such as, we've seen so many companies that I don't want to mention, but recently we are going through a certain challenge of such companies because they are fronting certain ideas that are not welcome to our cultural values. Therefore, they have to go through a certain scrutiny with URSB if they want to be formalized. All companies limited by guarantee are being challenged because of that. But if it is a company that is private, limited by shares, we only take you through the nitty-gritties of registration. You reserve your name, you attach Form A1, Form S18, the memorandum and articles, and therefore your company will be registered within a day if all paperwork is in order. Number 3, we have also public companies. Public companies are the ones which advertise their shares. Members of the public are invited to take a stake in the shareholding. Members can buy in the shareholding of the companies. You have seen MTN publicize they want to sell their shares to the public. We've seen Umeme, we've seen NSSF. All those can convert into public companies. But since I'm talking to startup entrepreneurs, you can start with a business name. A business name can wound up or it can cease and convert into a company. If the business has thrived to a certain tune, you can file what we call a notice of cessation, which costs only 10,000 shillings, and avail us with a certificate of registration of that business name and therefore we shall seize that business name and upgrade you to a company at a cost of 10,000 shillings. Most people come to our offices and claim that I want to use that very name because I'm upgrading. Yes, it is agreeable if the name does not exist in our database. But if it exists, we'll advise you to fine-tune it to suit another person's name, because we know that you're going to ride on the reputation of that person. We normally add the word limited if you're upgrading to a company. Any business name shouldn't have the word limited. That is a law that has to be followed according to the Business Names Registrations Act. All business names do not have the word limited. But if you're upgrading to a company, it must have the word limited. I distinguished between a business name and a company in a way that a business name is just a name that identifies your business. Most people most startups are business names, but they can upgrade to companies, whereas a company is a legal entity. It can sue and be sued. It is a legal person. It's a standalone. We have seen companies like Murwana's company, the Jessa factory. We have seen also the Mukwano group of companies. Their owners are long demised, but they are still living. They are still living. They live in succession. They live in perpetuity because their owners are long demised, but the companies are still existing because they operate through the shareholders. They can also do what we call the code of corporate governance. You can have a board where you can appoint a chair, a board of governance. You can appoint a secretary. You can appoint all these directors to run the day-to-day activities of the company. We have what we call the post-incorporation requirements. After you registered your business, what are the requirements URSB needs from a certain client? These are annual returns. Annual returns are basically, these are the forms that show the status quo of the company. If your shareholders were A, B, and C, did they die during COVID? If they are demised, then inform the registrar of company that this person died and we are replacing them with this person B. If your directors have changed, inform the registrar of company through that particular form that these are our new directors. If you've appointed a certain law firm to be your secretary, then inform them. It is a brief of what has transpired during the course of the company to file annual returns. That is a resolution to open a bank account, a resolution to obtain a credit from bank, a resolution to appoint new directors. We cannot work on that particular resolution if you're not, because they do not have annual returns. So I call on you to submit your annual returns annually in case you have not been updated with your statuses. So what other post-incorporation documents do we need? We also need what we call the Form 18. The Form 18 basically is an updated registered postal address. It must be furnished with Posta Uganda to validate that the postal address exists or not. If it's not validated by Posta Uganda, URSB will reject it and require you to go back and validate that postal address. I know it's a bit analog, but that is what the Companies Act provides under Section 116, because you're supposed to furnish the register of companies in case they want to serve you with any information so that they can avail you with that particular information, locate the exact location where your business is located so that they can furnish you with certain information. Thirdly, you're supposed to file what we call a form of allotment. That is called Form 10. Form 10 is basically information, put them under the code of corporate governance, because you're paying them a certain sum of money to make sure that they run your company. Even police, we've seen police officers come to our offices to do due diligence about particular companies because certain directors were involved in a fraudulent activity. This information is public domain.
Yes, I was saying, let's say you have a bigger company that is providing services, but you get a smaller product that you come up with, and you also want it to be like a standalone product, but also under your company. How do you handle it? Do you also register it as an individual company, or is there a way you can register it under your main company? Hope you have understood me. Thank you.
Before I delve into that discussion, we have what we call a group of companies. You have seen people register a group of companies where it's an entity and it's owns these entities. Most people want to incorporate a group of companies, but when you look at that, if you want a certain product to be owned under a company, you incorporate a business name. You register a business name, and it can own this particular product. Your business name can own a particular product rather than you registering different businesses where a URA will come for all those other businesses, entities. So it's better you register a business name, and this company.
Then for the resolution, they told us you need to file returns. 2021, we registered in 2020. 2021 returns were not filed. And then when it comes to the filing of returns, again, so there are really a lot of things that they were really asking us. Now, one thing that I was asking, are the returns for URA different from the returns from URSB? Because that's what we were looking at. So we went to URA, we were trying to file returns, and then URSB.
Of course, in all our engagements, that question can never miss. Most people confuse URA returns with URSB returns. And I think I hinted on it in my discussion that if you do not have annual returns, we shall be able to bounce whatever documentation you bring to URSB. You must be up to date with your annual returns, even if it's 2021. We are in 2022. Actually, it depends on your filing year. If you're supposed to file in 2022, you must be up to date with your filing accounting year, basically. So that register of companies was right to query those annual returns because you must be up to date with your filing year. Secondly, we are, of course, all government institutions. You've had the president encouraging people to go all online, all digital. We are also benchmarking on URA because recently, in the recent past, you cannot open up a TIN number physically. It's all online, all digital, and that is where we are going. If you want to file a resolution opening a bank account, we send you online. And actually, beginning December, all our services, we used to have walk-ins, like if you want to register a power of attorney, if you want to register a statutory declaration, an affidavit, all these are going to be online. So you have to brace yourselves and encourage yourselves to learn these new systems because you can do it in the comfort of your living room, in your office, in a cafe somewhere without necessarily coming to our offices. The annual returns of URA are completely different from the annual returns of URSB because we carry different mandates. URSB has a mandate of registering businesses, formalizing businesses, whereas URA has a mandate of collecting revenue from you. But first things first, you must formalize your business with Uganda Registration Services Bureau for you to obtain a TIN number. So they are completely different. 50,000 shillings annually.
Yeah, thank you very much for your wonderful presentation. I would agree with your point of everything is going digital. Even post office recently, you could actually register a box number virtually, you know. You could actually go click, you actually make online payments and they give you a box number. I did that recently. My question is though, as a startup, can I register my business in Uganda and also register the same business outside Uganda? Or do I, where do I start? I want to be able to get investments from out, right? And investors from out would very much trust their companies that are registered from their country. How do I go about that? How would you advise? Thank you.
It's actually an eye-opener. I can take you through, first of all, the formalities of registering a foreign company. One can start register for Form 26 that shows the representative of that particular company in Uganda. The representative must be based in Uganda. And we normally want that representative to be a legal advocate because of 1 million and my colleague has 100 million or 50 million. Of course, the bidding power will be different. This company of 50 million has more bidding power. It has more value than this one of 1 million shillings. And therefore, even when their share capital is 1 million, your share value will be less than the other person who has a share capital of 10 million. For example, if I have my company which has a share capital of 1 URSB,
Yes, on the issue of share capital, you say that if a company has 1 million shillings, then the share is 10,000, let's say for 100. So how does that grow? And let's say if the company gets funding and grows and increases, does the share capital remain the same? If people say want to split, does it remain the same, or we now look at the bigger value of the company? Thank you.
Very good question. We have all these platforms of growing your share capital. For example, and I can give an example of MTN Uganda, which started with 5 million shillings, but lately they increased their share capital from, they have a share capital, a net worth of 5 billion shillings, but they went on growing it. We have what we call a notice of increase in share capital. It is Form 12, and it pays 20,000 shillings. Only that we subject it to stamp duty. For example, if you started with a share capital of 1 million shillings and your business has thrived to a certain tune, you've gotten funding, you can grow that share capital. You notify us through Form 12, furnish us the information that I'm increasing my share capital from 1 million to 100 million. We subject it to 1.5% on the difference. That is 99 million. We subject it to 1.5 of the 99 million. That is the stamp duty that is payable in the bank when you're increasing your share capital. So it's very possible that you can grow your share capital from 1 million to 5 million shillings in order to gain the benefits, to leverage on the advantages of having a higher share capital from a lower share capital. Pardon? Yeah, it is still the same. The status quo is still the same. But when you increase, the value of the share also increases to a certain tune. Yes. So that means you can admit new shareholders. Because you have a higher stake in the company, the higher the share capital, the higher the share value, and the more people you can admit to be shareholders in the company. Thank you. We are also located at our new home, that is Kololo Baskerville building. We also have offices at Georgian, former Mom House, Georgian Street. So you're welcome in case you have any inquiries. We also have a WhatsApp number, a toll-free number also. Andrew, I think.
Good evening. My name is Lutaya Andrew. I work in the Public Relations Unit, URSP. Our WhatsApp number is 0712 448 448 for any questions you'd like to ask. And an email 0712 448 448. Then our email address is ursb@ursb.go.ug. Thank you.
Right, thank you very much. A round of applause. So we're going to quickly jump into the next session. My panel is mostly online, and if the subject is interesting to you, then you can remain. But all our panelists are online, and it's going to be about how do we get money flowing to the startup ecosystem. So if that's something you want to remain for, please feel welcome to be part of the conversation. I know that we have our panelists already online, 2 of them, and I'm still awkwardly deciding where to sit. So okay. As I buy time, I can pick on your expectations on the topic. Okay, is it possible to see them? Online sessions, because you're mostly talking to technology. So it would really help me if I can see your faces.
I think you need to give us some sort of permission to be able to turn on our video.
Yeah, I think they need permission to turn on their something about input video. Goodness, I'm the worst technology person to be moderating this, but you'll be super gracious. Signaling 1 minute, 1 minute. In the meantime, I will introduce myself as I just stumbled into the room. So my name is Jean Maki. Jean is just a pretentious way to say Jean, since the name is in French. I am the managing partner for Design Hub Kampala, which is one of the ESOs. ESO means an entrepreneur support organization based somewhere in industrial area. Anyone been to Design Hub? Then you'll be my favorite person in the room. Now, I like you the most. All right. Oh, great. You too. And I'm also the vice chair for Startup Uganda, which is the host for the Innovation Week. So the goal this evening, I think we've been talking about finances and finances and finances. And the people on the call are going to share, and we're really sharing notes from the region, which would be the East African region. How do we get money to flow in our actual startup ecosystem? Anyone in the room that has a startup? Who are you people? All right, anyone who works for a startup? Butcher their names. In no particular order, because I think I can see Jumane on the call. Jumane, who are you and what are you doing?
I'm a guy who loves to eat lollies. Yeah, so hello guys, my name is Gimane Mbambarike. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Sahara Ventures. I'm an East African citizen.
I'm sorry, I'm going to interrupt you. Sorry, technology is quite failing me here. It's not helping with my anxiety. So maybe something to do with your microphone, just to boost the sound. So I'm going to ask you to reintroduce, just turn it up a little bit. I have a very patient figure out this technology.
Okay, can you hear me well now?
Oh yeah, much better, right? Yeah? Yeah, I can hear you better.
Great, so you asked me who is Jumane. I just told you he's a person who loves to eat Lolex in the streets of Uganda.
Oh,
yeah, so my name is Jumane. I own a startup accelerator. We organize yearly an annual marketplace called Sahara Sparks. We've organized once in Kampala. And also we do a lot of work around digital economy in Tanzania and in East Africa at large. So that's me in the short.
Thank you. So Jumane is best in Tanzania, but as you hinted on the Rolex, I'm assuming you've been on the streets of Kampala. So waiting to tap your brain a little bit more on how we can get money flowing down here. And next in the call, I think I see Pascal. Who are you, Pascal?
Hi, so my name is Pascal Murasira, based out of Kigali. I'm a managing director for Norscan, and at Norscan we provide co-working space or physical infrastructure, as well as capital for entrepreneurs. In Kigali, we have a space now accommodating almost 800 people. And in terms of funding, we have a small fund that invests at seed level startups, and also a much larger fund that invests at startups raising from 10 million and above.
Wow. Thank you very much for that. And have you been to Uganda?
Many times.
Okay, then we're like you.
Went to school there.
Oh, great. And who else is on the call? I know I'm supposed to have Badrun Tege from NFT. He's not joined yet. And I'm really hoping that, I think we have a small cousin number with Jumane from Tanzania, and we have Pascal from Rwanda. And the conversation is quite easy, right? Because we're trying to figure out how we get money in the startup ecosystem. How do we get it flowing? But from the work that you are doing, first of all, do you feel like the startup ecosystem is productively consuming the existing funding? I'll start with you, Pascal, because you're still on the screen.
Well, I don't know why I'm stuck on the screen. But in terms of the startup being able to absorb the available capital, there is plenty of capital in the market. Yes, what we are reading in the news that funding is drying up for startups. That's not because there is not money. That's because the risk that's perceived within the startup ecosystems is becoming higher, and investors are becoming, or like people with money are becoming less comfortable investing in startups. So, but that does not mean that there is not capital that can be accessed by startups or that can be accessed by local funds. So I would say like the capital is still there, but it's a matter of having startups that are de-risked enough to give confidence to investors that can have.
But now you see there's some tier 2 countries for the African market, because now the market.
So what's the mismatch there? Because for entrepreneurs, we still feel like there's no funding out there, and it's the reason why a lot of companies are closing down. So what's the mismatch in terms of the available funding that you say there's a lot of funding out there vis-a-vis the cry for access to finance still?
Yeah, I think the key issue there is it's a problem that even in Tanzania we're having. There's a lot of entrepreneurs and there's a lot of startups, but there are very few investor-ready business. That's the biggest challenge, and there's a big difference between being an entrepreneur and running a startup and being ready to absorb capital from an investor. And that's where I think most of the innovation hubs, incubators, and accelerators, they should focus. We should focus more on getting people to become investor ready, because the biggest frustration investors have in East Africa, whether it's EOB Equity or Finca Venture or anyone, these VC firms that invest in the scope of East Africa, when you ask them, is a problem of the quality of the pipeline. The quality of the pipeline is very low. Most of the businesses are not investor ready. They lack internal system and structures to allow them to work with the investors. So the problem is not availability of the companies, but also it's not the availability of the investors. The key issue is, out of those companies that are available, how many are ready to actually do a transaction with a commercial?
To add on this, really try to think about this from an investor perspective. So if you're an investor, you're basically betting on a company's being able to grow your fund and be able to return, to give returns to other institutions that gave you the money, and also be able to make a profit and grow your fund. So when investors look at a startup or a business they want to invest in, they always look like, what are the risks associated with this venture? It can be real risk. Sometimes can also be what you can call like a biased risk. So which means that maybe those investors actually do not even see risks where there are no risks. So I'd say it's important that we not only like talk about like, you know, how do we access funding that's provided by current investors, which can be investors that are coming from outside of the region with very limited knowledge of the market they want to invest in. Can we get more local people, like people that have actually conducted the business in our markets in East Africa, to actually invest in startups themselves? because that is also a de-risking factor. So having local people having the skin in the game, believing in those startups, putting money in those startups. And we also need to have more role models. You just mentioned a good example of a Tanzanian company raising 32 million in this time. So that is putting the Tanzanian helping put the Tanzanian ecosystem on the map, which makes it interesting for international investors. Oh, like, you know, there's something happening in Tanzania. Let's go check it out. And then there is the time that these local startups, local accelerators get the opportunity to connect with these international investors to really help them understand the risk profile of the market, of the startups themselves. And at the same time, also for local entrepreneurs to be able to understand what these investors are looking for, how do they perceive risk in that specific markets, and maybe try to adjust to that reality. So I think it's twofold. Let's find more local people that actually understand the ecosystem and understand the market to invest. And also let's try to support role models so that they can help bring our ecosystems to the global maps of
Thank you, Pascal.
investment.
I'll come back to you there on, local homegrown solutions and investment. But I know Badru is on the call. So Badru, if you could quickly introduce yourself, who are you? And the question at hand now is, there seems to be the talk that there's a lot of investment. There's investment and finance available, yet from the startup world, there's a lot of cry in terms of access to finance. And we are wondering, in your perspective, what is the mismatch there and what needs to be done? So Badru, quickly, who are you? And a response to that question.
Thank you. My name is Badru Ntege. I have CEO of NFT Consult. Sorry, I'm a director. Sorry, I'm in a rush. NFT Consult. And I'm also a board member of Private Sector Foundation. I'm sorry I'm late because we've just finished our AGM. The question about the investor stages, I think for me is understanding how somebody talked about the pipeline and investor ready. And this is what happens at that stage before pre-seed. We have spent a lot of effort making sure that we go through the ideation and how the ideas are built. But then there is that a wonderful idea to a stage where it can get, they actually have real data about what they're trying to do, the value of their business and the direction. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we all seem to be unison in terms of talking about the quality of pipeline. And I would like to break this down in the least technical way, and also as a way for the entrepreneurs to understand by what we mean by not a great pipeline. So Pascal, from where you're seated and in your experience in the Rwandan space, what are those things that are still icky in terms of pipeline to make a sexy startup?
Building a pipeline, it's really a matter of information sharing. There is always a lot of really interesting entrepreneurs working in very interesting products. We even have, like at Norsken, we have some from Uganda, from Tanzania, from the region, Kenya, that come to start their businesses in Rwanda. But if you are an investor, you just want to have like a pipeline that is ready. But I'm a strong believer that startups should spend more time like building their products and talking to customers. Normally, when you have a product that the market needs and you have traction, so the people buying it, investors, they will come to you. So the job of investors to find those kind of startups. So in Kigali, what do we do normally? We just create an ecosystem, like one place where startups are based. Like as I already mentioned, we have almost 130 startups at Norsken. So if you are an investor and you want to see to build a pipeline, you can just come to our space. Then it will probably point you in the direction of where those startups that are raising are. But we try as much as possible to not tell startups to spend too much time being on chasing the opportunity to be on a pipeline. Rather, let them do amazing things. Investors will find them.
Maybe I'll switch the question up and to make it a little bit broad and ambiguous. When you look at the demographic of Africa, in the Western Africa, and I was in Zambia a few weeks ago, it was interesting to see such a loud West African ecosystem. And we had a session this morning and a report on funding and how it's distributed. You can see that they seem to take a big share of that finding opportunities. So what is it that in the region of East Africa, what can we do differently to make sure that we are equally competitive and sexy enough for investors to be in our region? What are those missing things for us? And that's really for everyone in the panel. So Pascal, I'll give you a minute to think through that and go to Jumane to pick his thoughts, Badru, and then Pascal.
Yeah, so I think, first of all, it's a very good question. And I don't think it's just the issue of, East or West. You have what I call the hotspot. If you look at amount of capital going to Nairobi, going to Cape Town, going to Lagos, as well as going to Cairo, it's more than 75% of the all capital that is coming to Africa in terms of VC funding. So what is common in this market? What are the things that we see? If you look at Nigeria, one of the things that really stand out is their diaspora community. They have a very strong diaspora community, which is actually connecting with the local startup ecosystem in one way or the other. They bring in mature founders who have connections and who have the ability to raise capital from mature market, whether it's in US or in Europe. If you look at Nairobi, and this is my general assumption, it's an expatriate economy. There's a lot of people who come to work for the likes of World Banks and UN, and then they remain in Africa. They partner with local founders to build startups. So they have the exposure, they have the connection, and they know how to raise capital. If you look at Cairo, it's located in the MENA region. They have a better chance to raise capital from the Middle East area, and also they speak common language, which is Arabic. And if you look at South Africa, from economic perspective and their history, you can see it's a more mature country than other African countries. So the key issue is how do we create our own context and our own stories and ways to bring capital locally in our own markets? I think we should start by assessing what is our strengths as countries, what do we have, what are the areas where we're doing really good, and how we can turn those into opportunities for our founders to be able to generate capital and to attract interest from regional and global investors. So a couple of things, if I were a founder in Tanzania right now and I'm looking to raise capital, what are the things that I should do to be able to raise capital, regional and global capital? First of all, I need to be working on a brilliant idea. I need to have a very strong, mature team, which is exposed and connected. So get a co-founder or an advisor who can actually add value to your company. I need to have an execution strategy that will allow me to scale beyond Kigali, beyond Kampala, and look at the sub-Saharan Africa, the market. I need to work on my timing. I need to look into a sector which actually is flourishing, has massive interest from the investors, as well as I need to be very clear in terms of my growth and exit strategy. If you look at the report that is being shared by the Big Deal and also Disrupt Africa in terms of type of startups that are attracting capital in the continent, these are the traits they have in common. But if you look at our own local incubators, startup accelerators and innovation hubs, most of our founders doesn't tick any of the items that I've just mentioned to you. So unless we want them to raise money locally, which again, they won't be able to raise locally, because also you have a lot of KYC if they want to raise money from banks already before even someone can invest locally. So I think there's a lot of effort that we need to put in to make sure these businesses at least reach to a stage where an investor can show interest. And this doesn't matter whether the local investor, regional or global investor. I'll stop there.
So dreaming beyond our borders, but also I like that you alluded to talent, and we'll get back to that. Badru, what are your 2 cents on that? And if you could please stand on your video. Yes, I'm glad you did.
I enjoy following the last speaker because I was actually taking notes because those build on that. Talked about the expat community, which is clear that we have seen that from the Nairobi conversation. The combination of the diaspora, we all have a diaspora community, but how are we engaging them, intentionally engaging them? And I think the other thing that we need to now add on to this picture is how do we, when we're doing our investor metrics and the value of what we're doing in terms of the context, how do we now look at the continent as the potential market so that an investor coming in is looking at the value of the 1 billion Africans and how many of our innovators are actually building and focusing on that number. One of the things that we tend to do is the only real value information we have is usually information from startups in the developed markets that have done well. And our contexts are usually very different. It's like when we talked about the different phases, most of our innovators do not have family members to invest in them. So that component is out of the picture. But now how do we intentionally now say, okay, maybe we might not value much from the expat community, but literally every African country has a diaspora community. How do we now intentionally come to that community and say, okay, this is where we want to go. What doors can you open for us? By the way, our metrics now are about 1 billion people. But the region we're talking about initially, let's say East Africa, we now have 400 million people, very close in terms of common languages. What can we do and grow in that particular space? And those numbers we have. The lack of data also on projections, the weaknesses we have in our, we don't yet have a banking ecosystem that is supportive of the investor space. And I attended a Bank of Uganda symposium yesterday, and it was clear they also realized that and we need to figure out how this space grows and comes into a bigger space. So I think, let me stop there. I'm sure I've raised more questions and potential solutions, but yeah, let me stop there. And we have more questions to ask out of here.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I think listening to you all, just as an ESO, as an enabler, I've never quite even thought about the diaspora. And so that's really a big takeaway and something that I believe Startup Uganda could do a little bit more.
All those points are right. Just to tell you a little bit about our own theory of change at Norsken. I don't know if the people in the audience are aware that Norsken originally comes from Sweden, and the founder of Norsken is also a co-founder of Klarna, which is actually now the biggest fintech in Europe. It's already one of the biggest unicorns in Europe. Our theory is that if you can have role models, like in an ecosystem, like people, let's say like you have a founder in Uganda that raises 50 million or like sells or becomes a unicorn as an example, that will open a lot of doors to the local ecosystem, but you need to find and support these champions. In Sweden, that happened 16 years ago when Microsoft purchased Skype. Overnight, everyone's ambition in the Stockholm ecosystem shoot 100 times, and that opened a lot of doors to the point that today you have more unicorns in Stockholm, a smaller city in a smaller country compared to Berlin, much bigger city in a much bigger country. And that was due to the power of having these superstar entrepreneurs that actually not only shows to international investors, but also local investors, local talents, local policymakers that actually there is money to be made in the startups. So the guys, ladies, founders that are already promising today in our ecosystems, we need to support them. We need to elevate them to that role model status, and that will help really attract a lot of capital to our own ecosystem and even have that structure change we are talking about from talent, from policies, from local.
But in the meantime, I want to ask the audience if there's any questions before we proceed. Does anyone have a question or thought? Or on the online team, is there any question in the chat? Yeah.
We're not able to hear the questions.
That's not working. Could you please take this over?
Thank you so much. My name is Donald. I have a startup, Doppler Technologies. And my question is on the issue of the pipeline. Our panelists have mentioned that the issue is with the pipeline. And what should be done on the side of entrepreneurs to actually fit into the pipeline? Because is that a role for government? Is there a part for the entrepreneurs actually to play in positioning themselves for the pipeline?
Yeah.
That would be my question. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. That's a good question. Any other? I'll take one more if there's any in the room. If there's none, we can respond to that for now. So the question is really, who is supposed to fix the pipeline? Because we all agree, or you all said, there's something wrong with the pipeline. Is it the entrepreneur? And if it is, what is it that they need to be working on? Is it the role of government or the ESOs? So for my panelists, if you have 2 cents to respond to that.
Yeah, I can try. I think it's a collective responsibility, and that's why it's called an entrepreneurial ecosystem. I can see Mr. Badru is our brother by age. So I will advise the entrepreneur in the room, first of all, to find more Badrus. People have been doing business for years. They can be very good mentors for him, to help him to understand what an investor is looking for. And this is something which we really take for granted. Most of the startup founders in Africa, we tend to ignore successful business people sometimes, and maybe to engage with them in a conversation that can be healthy to our business. So that would be the first good step. Just go and talk to someone who has built a business before. How do you build a business which is something that investor can develop an interest to? That is first on the entrepreneurial side. I think on the accelerator side, the accelerators and incubators, and it's an area which I've worked for so long, I think we need to be more structured. We need to have programs that push us to have very specific outcomes and results. We need to have very quantifiable key performance indicators. And in terms of our support mechanism, we need to have very strong support mechanism that actually these entrepreneurs in-house can be able to benefit from our program. And instead of just ticking boxes, we have X numbers of startups, but if we ask, like, out of those startups, how many answers for that? But also from the government state, there are also issues around regulation and policies. And how does the capital come into the country, and how does the capital goes out of the country? It really also informs investors whether they want to have an appetite to that market or not. So I feel it's a collective responsibility. We all have a role to play, but the most important role is played by the entrepreneur himself. You can spend just time online and Google how to get investor ready. I'm very sure there's a lot of articles and tools to help you to do self-assessment for investor readiness. I'll stop there.
I'm pausing to see if anyone else wanted to pick up the question, but if thoughts do come your way, please do. Yes, absolutely, Badru.
Build on that. Yeah, and I think just to build on that is really the concept of an intentional roadmap that is modified to fit into our environment. We know that our startups are starting from a slightly different start point from the standard framework. To identify that starting point in our context and then make sure that we now build a roadmap around that. Is the role for government? I think one of the things that I've found over the years is when you bring government in and you're not sure exactly on the direction you're taking, they will always take the wrong way. Make yourself, create your path, make sure that you're on your way there, then let them come and give you a hand. Do not bring them in at the beginning because you will never get the objective you want, because suddenly it becomes a government objective. So that was my advice to government. I like them, but keep them far at the beginning, bring them just to give you a hand on your way.
I like that very much. And to Pascal, and I think Jumanne, you alluded in terms of the relevance of good talent. Could you speak to the value of that? Because I see a lot of startups don't really see that what investors are looking at is who is on your team.
If I may go first, also like still a second to answer, to add my comment on previous question. It's important that entrepreneurs take their future in their own hands and not rely either on a government or rely on any donor or any third party. So it's the role of entrepreneurs to be interesting to investors if they need that capital. And also knowing what investors are looking for. They're just looking for an opportunity to make money as well. And that means like you need to have traction, or you need to have talent or the product that shows potential to bring in revenue. Back to your question about talent, indeed, if you're trying to be innovative, which is what startups do, disrupting the status quo, like getting customers from, selling something that did not exist in the market, you really need to have smart people to help you do that. Even yourself as a founder, you are one of the talent. The part that is, I think that's self-obvious, like everyone knows, like you need to have smart people if you are to be innovative or to work on something that's transformative. But the one part that sometimes founders do not give enough attention to is the structure of your talent. Like, how do you plan to keep them? Are you maybe giving them equity as well? Like that part of like how you manage talent in a startup, that's an area that as accelerators, incubators, or even external advisors can provide to founders. But otherwise, the talent itself, the importance of talent, it's like customers. It should be just self-obvious.
Jumanne, I hope I'm pronouncing it right.
So, it's you're pronouncing it perfectly. And if it disturbs you, just call me Tuesday, because that's Tuesday for Swahili, Jumanne. So I think the issue of talent, I usually clarify founders in Africa in 4 groups. So you have the founders who are completely traditional; they haven't even gone to school. So these are your traditional SMEs. They don't know about startup or coding and stuff like that. And then you have founders who have gone to school, recent graduate, have gone to college, they've watched some few series on Netflix about startup, and they're all excited. And then you have founders who have gone to corporate Africa, and at some point of time, they decided to move from corporate Africa to start startups. And then you have founders who are coming from abroad. They've stayed in the US or the UK, they see opportunity in Africa, they come to establish business here. So the problem we are having, we have many of the first 2 groups, those who haven't gone to school completely, and those who have just gone to school and they are very fresh and they want to start startups. What happened is, from the beginning, most of them, they're subjected to failure because they've never run a business before, and they're coming from a community where either their father or their mother is a public servant, or is working in a school as a lecturer or a teacher, and they're the first generation entrepreneurs. So the challenge becomes a bit bigger in terms of their learning and growth curve. And that's why it's very, very important for us to build these mentor networks. You create a lot of badru and put them in a network to support young people who are running businesses. It's very, very important to build local angels networks so that they can create confidence for regional and international investors who want to invest locally, and they can mentor these guys and help them in their growth journey. Because investors invest in people, and that is one of the biggest challenges in our markets. If you look also these other countries that are attracting most of the capital in terms of what they have in common, according to Google and IFC, the Africa Internet Economy, which they published sometime last year, and the number keep on going down if you compare with other East African cities and other African cities. So you see even the quality of the graduates, the number of graduates who are getting into the job market, the graduates who are entering through computer studies, as well as in communities where you have a lot of diaspora, where they can equip other young people with exposure capital, they have a better chance to succeed. Yeah. So, and that is scientific. So I think we need to find a way to equip our local talent by introducing them to these other platforms, but also give them access to mentorship and also investing in alternative skilling platforms like the Gebea or the Andela and all these people and Molinga, all these programs that can teach them how to code, how to work with startup companies, because that's the only way we can be able to create a large pool of talent who can co-found businesses that has potential to scale.
Thank you so much. Unfortunately, I'm being warned that my time is up, but I'll give us all just like 30 seconds. Your final parting shot that's relevant to how do we make sure money flows into our ecosystem. Just to clarify again, on the call we had Badru Ntege, a CEO of NFT Consult. You maybe want to Google that later. The Managing Director of East African No Skin Foundation, Pascal Murasira. And from Tanzania, Jumanne, CEO Sahara Ventures. So quickly, what are your parting shots? And I'm seeing one hand up, so I'll give you a chance, sir. Your question and
thank you very much. I'm only Huntington. I have made an observation, and I would like to just say,
yeah.
Is either correcting that notion or correcting either.
Okay.
That we as entrepreneurs, somewhere, somehow, we are not supposed to rely always on the government, etc. Allow me to say it. There is a reason when as entrepreneurs we want to rely on the government. There are certain things that must be provided by the government.
Yeah.
I'm going to go straight to this. Under which investor, the ecosystem builder, rely
We can't hear very well.
Could you use your microphone, please? So your question is around what do we still make sure we hold the government accountable to as an entrepreneur, right? Okay. I don't know if you had the question. So in your parting shots, the gentleman that believes that the government still has a hand to play in supporting an entrepreneur in terms of infrastructure. So what are those core things that we can still say that we hold the government responsible in terms of supporting the ecosystem in your perspective? And your parting shots, please. Thank you. Rock, paper, scissors. I'll go with Jumanne. You go first. And Pascal, then Badru will conclude us off. Thank you.
I think I've talked a lot. Doing this, keep doing the vision.
It's the responsibility of the government to provide infrastructure, but it should never stop an entrepreneur to innovate. It's a matter of understanding what's available, what are the opportunities around you, and even if they are not there, probably that's also an opportunity maybe to build that infrastructure yourself instead of waiting for the government to do that for you. So yeah, that's my take on that.
Yeah.
And my parting shot is that we should all do our best to support local role models. That means investing in them, helping them access, getting their stories out through media, influencers. Like, let's support our role models. That will have a ripple effect on the entire ecosystem.
Great. So let's make noise about ourselves first, right? Badru, in 1 second.
Thank you. Back to entrepreneurism it's very hard for government to plan for entrepreneurism because they don't know what it is we're doing. We're breaking the mold. So yes, they can be there ready to hold our hands, but they cannot be there to help us start off. So once we get that in our minds, then we're going to go against things that are not there today, and it will take you a lot longer to get them to understand that. So we have to be prepared to start our way, but also make sure that we have a dialogue that helps us dialogue with them in a language they understand for us to achieve the objective. The other challenge is we need to learn to speak their language, then be able to get our way by making them understand what we want from them. They can't understand some of the things we're talking to them. And I say this because I've been doing this for the last 20 years with government. Sometimes it's not that they don't want to help us, it's sometimes they don't have a clue what we're asking them to do. And we need to actually walk the way with them, and we'll be able to achieve what we want. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We cannot exhaust this. But again, that's why there's platforms like Startup Uganda. It's a private initiative. And the goal is, sorry, Badru, did I cut you off with your last thoughts? Badru? You had
Hello?
one magical thing. Yeah.
I was speaking, you didn't hear me at all?
No, I did not, but I'll let you finish.
Wow.
Oh, I can hear you
No,
now.
at what point did you lose me?
I think you told us that the government doesn't get it, and it's our role to make sure that we start where we are, and they'll get around it somehow.
Yes, but also we need to understand, get into their mind and know how in how they need to understand us and speak to them in the language that they understand, as opposed to shouting that they don't understand us and not understanding them. Let's seek to understand them first, then we'll make them understand us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If you do need any further support, just look up Startup Uganda. We have 26 members, and all these are playing a role in supporting a startup in one way or the other. So as we wait for government, as we bring them on board, we just can't stop dreaming, right? So our inventions and interventions need to happen as we wait for government to come on board. So hope you can reach out to any of our members. And that's the end. Thank you so much, my panelists, for joining online and for making it less awkward to moderate an online panel.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, good evening, everyone. How are we doing? Hey, you guys have low energy. Is it because the SC or the session? So most welcome. We're going to be having a very critical and fun conversation in this room regarding making innovation and entrepreneurship work for women. So if you're a woman or if you're a man that routes for women, we're glad to have you in the room. We're just completing the setup, and we'll be starting in 2 minutes. Thank you. DJ, if you could have a song or something. Okay, thank you so much, DJ. So I know you're wondering what a man is doing up here for a women's session. So for the next couple of 1 hour or about 45 minutes there's going to be a panel or a fireside curated by some very interesting ladies from the innovation community. But as we probably want to get started, I want to just encourage us to move in. This is going to be an interesting conversation, and some people are still coming in and wouldn't want them to walk in on the camera frame. So those of us at the back, let's move in so that when guys are coming in, they can fill up the back seats. Yeah, that's cool. Let's just move up front. Let's bring it in. Thank you. Let's just move it. Let's move in closer so that as people come in, they don't get into the camera frames. Thank you. So the conversation today is going to be steered by an interesting lady. Her name is Susan Asimwe. Susan is a seasoned innovation manager and business analyst with over 3 years of experience in this space, yeah? So she's been working and supporting work within the startup ecosystem. And as a senior innovation manager at the Innovation Village, she's done a lot of work championing corporate innovation. She's been at the core of making sure our entrepreneurs interact with the corporate world or with Uganda's private sector to see how best they can forge a way forward together. So allow me at this point just invite Susan, who leads the design and implementation of our Startup Accelerator programs at the Innovation Village, to introduce to us the eminent panel that is going to be engaging with us this evening. The essence of this conversation is heavily participatory, because what we do here today, guys, is going to form what we are trying to call the Women's Guide to Entrepreneurship in Uganda. So every single thing you're going to say is going to be noted, and a report will be authored after this, leading towards that development. So Susan, let's give Susan a round of applause as she comes to the front. Thank you.
Thank you, Ivan, for that wonderful introduction. Thank you, everyone, for making the time for this session. Like he said, my name is Susan Asimwe. I champion the corporate innovation arm at the Innovation Village, and I've been working with startups to help them build and scale their solutions. With me today is a very eligible panel. Just a second. Yes, so with me today is a very eligible panel of ladies who have walked this innovation journey in different aspects. Our first panelist for the day is Persis Ashers, who is currently the Chief Operating Officer at the Innovation Village. And as she walks up to the stage, I'll just say a little bit about what she has done. She has over 11 years experience in people and operations management, and she was the Africa Regional Operations Director at ID Insight. Persis has led Pan-African Data Science Program for engineers at the African Leadership Group. She's also accrued notable operations management experience from Nelson, Microsoft, and her entrepreneurial venture, AfriQuest Research. She's also the founder of Akila Girls Leadership Initiative to provide self-empowerment tools for teenage girls, and is currently serving in her position as Chief Operating Officer at the Village. You're welcome, Persis. Our second panelist for the day is a founder of Wabibi Pads. Wabibi Pads is a social enterprise innovating sustainable solutions to mitigate poor menstrual health management among women and girls. Welcome with me Bernadette Ojao, who is also a Young Water Fellow, solving WASH challenges within the country. And to note is that she is the winner of the recently completed Uganda Needs More of You Airtel campaign. Our third panelist of the day is Dr. Rebecca Isabella Chichoncho, who is currently serving as the Vice Chair of Business Process Outsourcing at the Innovation Council under the Ministry of ICT and National Guidance. Rebecca is an academician with the Department of Taxation and Auditing, Faculty of Commerce at Makerere University Business School. She's also an emerging scholar with particular interest in mobile technology, usability, and financial inclusion through digital technology. She also holds a PhD from Eindhoven University of Technology in the Netherlands. You're welcome, Rebecca. Our fourth panelist of the day is Sylvia, who is currently serving as the business analyst at Centenary Group under Centetech Technology Services. She has over 6 years of proven success in delivering highly effective and innovative business solutions. She successfully supported the conceptualization and implementation of local and international systems and promoted the uptake of use of e-services in 15 and over multi-sectoral government agencies. You're very welcome, Sylvia, to the panel. So ladies and gentlemen, I know Ivan was wondering what he's doing at a women's panel, but I am a strong supporter of having men in the room when we're discussing women issues because we are better together. Allow me to set the stage for this discussion by, bringing us up to date with what the current status of innovation and entrepreneurship for women is in this country. As you may have been informed, the theme is making innovation and entrepreneurship work for women. But as of 2021, venture capital directed towards women-founded startups stood at 2% globally. So you can imagine if we trickle that down to Uganda, how negligible, almost non-existent that is. World Bank also proved that women-led businesses have 50% less capital, that's as of 2019. Women enterprises in Uganda generate 30% lower profits, 41% fewer hours of labor, and are 31% less likely to introduce a new product, and this is over 12 months in comparison with their male counterparts. Now, if you've been very keen enough, even just for these 3 days in the Innovation Week, you'll notice that startups that are making it within the startup ecosystem scene are tech and tech-enabled. They have an aspect of engineering, an aspect of STEM, and use of technology. However, because we still see underrepresentation of women in STEM, it means that women are most likely not able to innovate within these sectors. So why are we here today? Why is this discussion important? UN Women says that there is a potential of closing, when we close this gender gap, we have a potential of adding 10 to 17 trillion dollars globally to the economy, and that women-led startups, which are actually operating, yield 35% higher returns. So the conversation is not whether the women are eligible, is that they are way eligible and can even do it better. It also shows that when women are in businesses, they employ 35%, 75% women compared to their male counterparts who only employ 20% of women. So if we're getting women in businesses and supporting them, we are creating opportunities for more women. So today we want to understand, number one, where are these women? Are they innovating? If they are, what barriers are stopping them from being recognized in this entrepreneurship and innovation ecosystem? So to start with, I'll ask each and every lady here to, one, share with us what their experience has been in their innovation journey, and if they've experienced any barriers. I'll start with you, Persis.
Well, I think that's a broad question, but in my innovation journey as a female, previously as an entrepreneur and now as an aspiring restaurateur and also as CEO at the Innovation Village, I think some of the challenges are really just around what I call a world that's designed for the male. So as an entrepreneur, I'm thinking about putting out a product. I have a bias, whether I like it or not, and maybe because of the socialization, where when we're designing for the masses. So I think this has been something that I've reflected a bit about, and really landed at the, or developing anything for the world, that there's more than one gender, and then that then leads to us thinking about innovation more specifically than just putting out products for a user who is often male.
I think I'll use this. Well, in my case, I'm going to speak for someone who is coming from a background that, not everyone really prioritizes. That is for women in marginalized communities. And before I started what I was doing, I remember searching for jobs. I think that is one thing that we all know, that once you're out of school, you have to go out and search for a job. But then, how many jobs are out there? And do you have the right qualifications? Those were the questions that I would ask myself continuously. So, but in my case, of course, I realized to do what I was to do, I needed funding or money to start what I was doing. Luckily, I always tell people, it was by the grace of God, a friend of mine was going somewhere. She was traveling, so she gave me a machine. But how many people have accessibility to machines or tools to use when they're starting up whatever they want to do? So she's either innovative, or she can either start up something, or she either gets a skill. If not, then you'll hear cases of domestic violence, early childhood marriages. Luckily for me, of course, my situation was deep from family. I would notice that challenge within my home, at home, the problems that we're facing. And being a first child, I definitely had to make sure that I did something to change the status quo of my family. And that's how I innovated around the Wabibi pad. But then I won't tell you it was an easy journey. First I prototyped, of course, with the machine, but then the demands kept on coming. I needed to actually have my product seen. I needed someone to use it. I tried to use it for myself, but of course, it's not the same like when someone uses the product. So the barrier there was, where do I get the fund that would push me to what I want to do or to where I want to go? Then, of course, we all know that COVID caused a lot of issues, but for me, I tell people it came to me in handy as a blessing, because it's then, that is when, of course, MasterCard came through with the Young Africa Works program, and I was lucky enough to pitch my product, my pad, and then I got funding. So you see that it all rotates around funding, which is still a major barrier when it comes to women entrepreneurship. I think it's very easy for men. I don't know, it's either automatic that men have the spaces, or they know how to maneuver through, but most women don't. Most of us do not know where to get these opportunities. Now, for a person who is coming from a place like Kamocha, they're only going to be within their circles, but then unless they go out and meet other circles, that's when they're able to associate and find better opportunities. So another barrier is not having associations that could take you to the next level. And you find that we are told Uganda is a very entrepreneurial country, but how many people make it to their third year? So I remember, again, because the other day I was trying to look at how our revenue streams have been from 2020 when we began up to date. And I remember something that I quoted, that someone once told me that being a resilience, if you have that, then you are able to really push. for what you want, or you're able to do what you want. So I was looking at 2020, it was really a bad year. And I remember telling myself, what brought you into this world of entrepreneurship? But if you have a purpose for what you are really pushing for, like personally, I had a story. It was why I was starting what I am doing today. You know, if I don't know how many ladies here have missed out school because of menstruations, but to me, I needed to use that problem to create a solution. And so, if you can find a problem and a solution to that, then you're able to really do something for yourself. But funding.
I know that you're a researcher, and that you have done work within, Makere on especially the rural woman, and just trying to understand the gaps around entrepreneurship. I'm very keen to hear what the results were and, how we can close them.
Thank you, Susan. A pleasure to be here. A good day to everyone. I would like to give some context before I get to your question. Whenever I wake up in the morning, the first thing I am is a mother. As a woman, the first thing I am is a mother. The next thing, I'm a wife. When I leave home, the first thing I become is Dr. Rebecca. So I have my career, I'm an academician, but I also have 2 businesses. So I'm an entrepreneur. I also belong to some associations. So I have a bit of social work that I have to do. There are so many waves a woman has to ride in order to get ashore. And maneuvering these is very difficult. But most of us do this to have, first of all, an impact in society, but also to make ends meet at home. Many a times we do research which comes up with good policies, and government shelves these policies. Very good policies, I must say. I did some research. I do a lot of research in the rural areas, and more to do with usability, adoption of technology, mainly in financial technology. I have a bias in financial technology. I found that women do not participate in the digital economy. They have many vulnerabilities to do with skills. However, in as much as they have these vulnerabilities, they are able to what I call survival means of using technology. So once I did a usability study of how to use mobile money, everybody I think knows mobile money. And I was trying to test the user interface for mobile money. And I found these women who could actually go through the whole sequence from the first step of send money, input the next step, input the next step. And then at the end I asked her, can you read for me the confirmation message? First of all, she could not locate her inbox. And then when she was able to locate her inbox, she couldn't read the message. And that means that she was illiterate. However, she could go through the whole process, surprisingly. So I found that whenever technology is useful, it will be used, irrespective of who or the criteria of the person that is supposed to use it, educated or uneducated. So if we are to empower women, we must skill them. We must skill them. For developers of technology, you must work on collective intelligence to make sure that you develop technologies that can be used by these women. And I like mobile money very much because it's a technology that has been able to give financial independence to me. So a woman can be able to keep her money safely on her phone without the husband knowing. And no offense to the men in the room. But it is a means by which a woman can survive, but also take care of her household in situations when the man cannot. Many times I have also been in Masaka where I met women who till the land, and then the husband comes at the end to harvest and go and sell the produce. And what happens thereafter, they go and spend the money on alcohol and so forth and so on. It never trickles down back to the household. And therefore, when they are able to get this money and keep it under tight security on their mobile phones, it is an achievement for them. Yes. So I think my greatest barrier would be low participation in the digital economy. But I would also like to say that access to health at the lowest level is very important for women. Whenever our children get sick, there will be no productivity. There will be no productivity. Even if you go to work, your mind will not be at work. Your mind will be at home. So it is very important, and this is a big barrier. So once you couple limited access to health facilities for the rural woman, and then limited access to funds for livelihood, but also all the hard work they put in and they get nothing, then we have a woman that has a potential to not be impactful in that particular community.
Thank you, Doctor. Over to you, Sylvia. Please do highlight, I know that you have a background with Centitech Technologies and with IT as well. I'm keen to hear how you think STEM and tech in general are very key to helping women innovate and inspiring that innovation mind.
Okay, well, good day to you all. Sylvia Nakanwaja, I'm a business analyst. So my career journey, I've been a business analyst for almost over 7 years. And throughout my journey, I've dealt with so many stakeholders. I've dealt on projects, on e-services, and during these projects, I have been having direct links with the stakeholders, implementation teams. And as we all know in IT, most of our implementation teams are basically 80% or 90% are men. So one of the scenario I've had is one of the team that I first joined when I was at NITA, because I started with NITA-U. We were in a department, and the department had almost 16 members, and were only 2 ladies. And one of the lady, actually, the good thing is she was the department head. So at during most of the instances, we would have scenarios where I would have to lead the team or organize them or doing the respective action points as per the respective projects, so development of e-services. But as a lady, as a woman, by then actually I was a bit young, so I had that fear that if I tell someone to do what they're actually supposed to do, what will the reaction be? Will they be able to implement what exactly I will be telling them? But at the end of the day, actually, what used to help me is that even as I was dealing with these the gentlemen, I had that back-end support from my boss, who was actually like a mentor, would actually sit in the office. She would tell me, I know you're having some pressure because these are all men, but you know we have to be here, we have to do our work, so just be tough on them. She actually advised me to be tough on them. You don't have to look so simple, so that they're looking at you like in a sympathetic way. So I had to have that self-confidence that yes, I can work with this team, we can deliver e-services, and more so, even with, because we used to support other government agencies, and it's actually the same thing that I was going through. You'd still work with another implementation team, with another government agency, and you still had to deal with specific stakeholders, and of course there's that gender imbalance. So I had to be at the forefront, lead, support, guide, also receive guidance from the team, but there was that harmony. Forget about the fear, be there, do your job consistently. And well, that self-confidence, I had that lack initially at the beginning, but as I grew up in my career, I got to know the people, I had to understand the people I'm working with, understanding them. But then one of the things that I would also talk about is resilience, like she had mentioned about it. Sometimes, even in our day-to-day jobs, even in our workplaces, whether you're in innovation or entrepreneurship, farming, doing all your kinds of things. Sometimes as women, for example, if we get a shortfall, we might take it to some extent emotional. Sometimes we feel so down, we might feel, oh, will I be able to succeed? What is the perception of people? Probably people think I may not be able to do it, I may not rise again. So sometimes that kind of feeling pushes us back to move forward. So I really, as for myself, I've really prayed so hard to male mentors that I can reach out to, get guidance. So actually that has really helped me to work out. Because most times, as we implement these projects, sometimes you're sent to, let's say, to go and engage a key stakeholder. A key stakeholder would be, let's say, a head of an organization, one of the government organizations. Probably something is not going right with the implementation team, so you'll need to get guidance from the top stakeholders on what should be done. So at times I would have that fear, knowing how can I approach that, let's say that PS, that permanent secretary. What will I say? Will they be able to listen to me? Like, I could look at myself, then wonder if whatever I'm going to say will create impact or will be adopted by the people I'm going to approach. So at the end of the day, with the results, because I know as women, sometimes we have that inner ability. We can push things. Sometimes that's why we even push things to, let's say if there is a shortfall, they can actually say, oh, you have a soft spot, go and approach that person. It will work out. One of the incidences I can also maybe tell you about were in a workshop. So actually it was a training. Some were abroad and were having teams of different people from different nationalities. So I was representing Uganda. And in one of the sessions, I did my presentation, talked to the people, and everyone was happy. So as we were having a tea break, and let me use the word elderly. She was part of the participants, but she was a bit elderly. So she came to me, asked me, hey, Sylvia, are you married? No, I told her, I'm about to be engaged. I'm going to get married like next month. So she told me, I really feel bad. I have my son, he's a troublemaker. I just wish I could link you up to her. So my mind was, is she just wanting to bring someone for me to put upright? Or maybe she saw that potential that I could change, that I could make impact onto something. So my thinking is that we should believe that we have impact. We should have that resilience. If you're pushing for something and there's a problem, there's a shortfall, we should feel free to push on to, let's say, seek guidance. If there's a mentor, whether male or female, we should go approach to whoever can support and get guidance. So my key things is on self-confidence, resilience. Yeah.
Thank you. I hear very resounding key points from what you have shared. I hear skilling. I hear that also women wear different hats and have to juggle very many things on top of running a business. I also hear capital. And to you, Persis, and to you, Doctor, I know that you have dealt with programs that are specific to women. Do you feel that they need a particular skilling that is away from the generic skilling that entrepreneurs get?
That's an interesting question. I think women, and especially women in many African cultures, are dealt a different set of cards than women in other regions. And so as we think about skilling and what resilience means, we are in a different space. And so I would say yes. I would say yes because we need to think about how do we help female entrepreneurs and female innovators then build skills that would help them navigate spaces where they are a mother, an entrepreneur. They have so many hats that are not the norm all across the world. And so as we think about supporting them, we have to take all these different aspects to mind. I remember, and many times I say, one of the reasons why I felt I was so successful as an entrepreneur was because I got married really young. So I think I was about like 22, and everyone thought I was crazy. Also coming from Kenya, that is not the norm. But I think for the most part, it helped me really just focus on a business and growing a business, but also engaging with older women who had walked the journey and who had juggled all these different, balls and kept them up in the air, helped me then just like navigate spaces that would have otherwise been very difficult. For a young entrepreneur who's trying to build a company and doing that right out of university, newly married, these are not, it's not normal to have all these hats, but many African women are doing it, many Ugandan women are doing it, and so we need to think about that specific profile and how best we can support them.
Thank you, Susan. I think skilling is multifaceted, but also it could happen at so many different levels. Definitely, yes, the woman needs special training because we have special needs. But we have different types of training. So we have training that you can get from social support. We belong to these associations, Mothers Union, you have a SACCO, you have an investment club, you have all these. You have an array of resources in these kinds of associations that can boost your innovativeness, your creativity, and your entrepreneurial skills through mentorship, through networking, through exposure to opportunities, and so forth and so on. But also there's that special skilling that keeps coming up, being skilled to have a growth mindset. And research has been done about it. And I think in Togo, there was an experiment that was done to test the growth mindset training, which is a combination of proactiveness, resilience, and entrepreneurship, versus a general business training for women. And the findings showed that in the growth mindset training, the women were able to increase their profits by 40%, compared to the 5 percentage points in the general business training. So having a special type of training does work for women. Definitely, it has been tested, it works, but also there's that informal training that is very important for us as women. Many times I interact with men who say it is very difficult for them to interact with their fellow male colleagues about problems. Whereas for us women, it comes naturally. You meet your friend, you talk about your issues. By the time you leave that conversation, a certain burden has been unloaded, and you feel ready for the next day, which they do not have, unfortunately, as male. So that kind of training, support, skilling, association is all very important for us as women.
Thank you. So I also know are the same fields that are attracting the venture capital. So my question is, and to you, Abibi Pads, and also Sylvia. One, how have you seen STEM, the engineering,
But then on ground at assessment, you'll find that only 25% are skilled. So we also need to find out the underlying challenges as to why we are not skilling the exact number, or we are not reaching the statistics that we intend to reach. Then one of the things is also regarding all that, like she said, if we implement respective innovation strategies, how are we reaching implementation bit? Okay, the women may wish to access, but what is, let's say, the government, the associations that we are working with, how are they helping with that? How are they drilling down to those underlying issues? Yes, for example, we are saying that there are challenges in digital skilling, innovation with women, but how are we addressing the issues of potential? How the women fear, that internal fear? Do they have like mentors? Even if they need mentors, do they need female mentorship or male mentorship to guide them? Yeah.
Thank you. Over to you, Abibi. How have you applied STEM and engineering principles to be able to, grow Abibi?
Well, I must say I'm a beneficiary of STEM. Yeah. The first time I remember every product of mine that I've done, I've managed to market it through social media and gotten people to come and support me. I remember when COVID-19 had just started, I innovated a face mask and I shared it onto my Instagram. Then also took the initiative to share it on other pages on Facebook. And I specifically mapped out, and I went to Kampala expatriates because I had done a research about the flu that was in the European countries. So I knew that these guys would take my product faster than my fellow Africans who are seeing it as a strange thing. And it worked, you know. It worked. Michael, the guy, the director of Tugende, came and just ordered 1,500 masks. So you see that it is very important for women to actually even have digital knowledge. Using a smartphone, I always tell people that this is my office at all times, even if I don't have my renewers, and being that my product is within WASH. They took us through an hackathon. Of course, they trained us. And I mean, if I had not used my phone, probably I would never have gotten that call, you know? So I always tell people that, you know, don't waste a lot of time trying to be on phone doing nothing. Be on phone doing something that could help very many people out there. Lately, we are also introducing a system of having to train people how to make their own parts through the phone. So there is a lot of Zoom. You know, I don't know, I think COVID introduced a lot of things. I don't know, maybe Zoom was there before then, but I got to know about it during COVID. And we're now starting to have lessons with people outside Uganda. I have people that I train in Tanzania right now. They pay me through the mobile money, which is very easy. So it is very, for me, I've benefited through STEM, though there is someone out there still, like she had said earlier on, who does not have this digital knowledge and who still really needs to like get to it, because you find that people have very many innovative ideas out there, but they do not know how to push them out to the public. Probably half of this room would not have known me if Airtel did not take the initiative to hear us out on TV, you know? But today we've become a household name. And my own kids have also learned my name. Like I ask my daughter, what's my name? Bernadette. And then you ask her, what's your dad's name? She'll tell you Babe. Okay. But at least I'm happy that, you know, my kids are getting to know my name, all because of STEM, because, yeah, really, that's what I can say.
Thank you. Who have businesses of your own, have you been bootstrapping? What has the journey been like for you? I'll start with Persis.
So I think first we live in a world where a lot of the money is held by white male. And so when you think about an African entrepreneur who's female, those two people are like at extreme ends of that platform. And so I think first, I don't think sufficient amplification of some of the entrepreneurs that we have within this continent has been done, and the impact of their work. I know many female entrepreneurs fall within social innovation as well as creative innovation. And once again, those are two sectors where not as much focus has been put, because it means that the returns are not as fast or as huge as, you know, some of these funders would be looking for. So I think first we need to think about amplification and amplifying the impact of the work of these amazing females, but also secondarily creating funding within the continent, within the resources that we have, that specifically focus on this group of women.
Well, what I would say is that if you have an idea and it's in your briefcase, no one knows about it, you've not taken an initiative to tell someone about it, it will stay in there, you know? But if you get into circles that you get to share about your idea, bring it out, or maybe prototype around it, share it out, people can easily identify what you're doing and then try to fund you. How? Like I always tell people that the Innovation Village helped me bring my idea to life. I had this idea, brilliant idea, like I said earlier on, the pad and then the one sewing machine, but I wanted it to be seen, I wanted it to be used, but I did not have adequate capital. In fact, what I had was not even, it was just me trying to go here, but nothing much would come out of it. But when I got my fund from the Innovation Village, I first sat and quoted words that I saw on CK status, like, many are called, but few are chosen. I told myself, it's like this guy is trying to prophesy, so if you try to be among the called and you're not chosen, then it's upon you. So I remember getting back home, and that week I was so deep into prayers, like, God, this is your thing. You're the one who has begun this, because I'm not the one who went and looked for this guy. I just shared my thing, and things have been handled. Now what do we do? I remember that time I was invited to the Innovation Village. Come, let's do your work plan, deliverables. I was, okay, this is taking me so fast, but I think this would help me so much. So we went through the whole process. Year one, we skilled the women, and the money was going, At first, what I didn't understand was either I use the money to make more money, but then deep inside me, I was like, no, you're a social entrepreneur. You want to be a social entrepreneur. You want to create impact, You want to help women start up something for themselves. You want to have them learn something, like a skill that could help them create their own opportunities. Year one, money has gone. COVID is happening, second phase. And I'm looking at the money, I'm like, it has not returned back anything, And then here is the Innovation Village asking me for reports. I'm giving reports, but I'm saying I hope they don't ask about how much money has been, increased into what I was given. Year two, things started to pick up. But then it wasn't so promising, because I was looking at returning back all the money the way that I was given, because I wanted to make more profit for what I was given, But it's later on that this year that I've started to see that actually the patience of managing the fund, of trying to put it in very useful things, could help it grow. If I had, of course, I know very many people were given money, including some people that I know who got much more than I did. And today when you look at their work, you feel like, I wish it was actually given to us who could even do much with it. Yeah, and funders face a lot of challenges with trying to fund people, but then people divert the funding. And I always tell people, it is your funding to help you come up out of something such that you can help very many people. But most cases, the biggest number is like, it's a white man's money. They won't follow up on it. Oh, the other people are also eating on it, But I always tell young people that, when you get funding, try to see that it multiplies such that the next time someone can trust you again with the fund. So really, for me, I think it's all about how you manage it and what you prioritize with it, and also creating things that could help you actually generate income fast. Like what Wabibi does, we don't only produce the pad, but we also skill. And we charge people for the skilling, because I had to learn the hard way. The first 800 women all were free. Of course, I was telling myself they were paid for by MasterCard. Okay, I gave them the skill and all that. But today, you do not walk into our doors to get a free service, so you have to pay for it. And that is the way we're able to manage the fund. Yeah.
Thank you. And maybe just before we go to Dr. and Sylvia, if you have questions, and please, I really want to hear from you, especially women entrepreneurs in the room. What do you need? What are those things that you need to support you to be able to, get funding, or what kind of skills do you need? So please prepare your questions as we come to you. Over to you, Doctor.
Thank you, Susan. I would like to build upon what Bernadette has said. Funding is available. Funds are there. the equation of funding, in my opinion, has two things. One is value. If your idea, if your product, if your service will create value, find you where you are, you have to get visibility. You have to get visibility. You have to go to the, it is not the same vision that you have. Your vision is, I can make as much money as they're making. Her vision was probably, I have this skill and I have something to offer to this community, which you do not have. And I will give you another example. Allow me to market myself. So in Chira, I have a man-made lake. I made a man-made lake. We have been doing it for 5 years. We hope to change and transition into a resort. Now, many people have come to look at what I have done, and they appreciate it. A few people have tried to do what I have done. The problem is that they did not ask how we did it, because they did not have the same vision that we had. And therefore, it becomes problematic. So take advantage, ask. I'm sure nobody, for entrepreneurs in this room, if somebody wants to start the same business that you are doing, and you went up to them and tell them, can you help me? I would like to do this. How did you get it done? Where did you find the resources? And resources can be financial and non-financial resources. How do we partner together? How do we make this work? Because I could be doing the same thing somebody in Bushenyi is doing. And therefore, we can work together. We can, go to the tourism board and say, we're going to make maybe a group of people who are making man-made lakes. We would like to be marketed abroad and stuff like that. We partner together to do the same job, to offer the same service, but we want to work in silos. I have my small rabbit. My husband likes to say it's better to eat a thigh of a cow than to eat a rabbit. So eating the thigh of the cow is working with X, Y, Z to make sure that we achieve our goal. But if I want to work in isolation, I will get problems. In those networks is where we can access funding, is where we can get visibility. The funding is there. My appeal is, let us see what you are doing. I sit on the Council of Business Process Outsourcing and Innovation under the Ministry of ICT. What we are supposed to do with innovators is to identify those disruptive technologies and support them from ideation all the way to scale. Can we see what you're doing?
Yeah.
Come. Let us see what you're doing. Let's see how to support you. So my answer to the funding question is create value and be exposed. You will get funding.
Thank you, Doctor.
Actually, Doctor has mentioned some of my points, because one of the things that I also look at is, I know funding is there, but are we getting that actual information to know that there is this specific funding? So I usually urge my friends and my colleagues to usually utilize their circles. You could have a friend that could have information about specific funding. Go on the internet, look out for some funding organizations. You will be able to come across, get funding, and as well, make sure you have vision. You might get funding like Bernadette mentioned. You could get funding, you know what you want to do, but at the end of the day or within the process, you could feel that probably it's not working. So you then get back to the vision, and also persistence comes in. So we usually, as women, I know we usually have that challenge. You get funding, probably things along the way don't come out, then you try to think of another way. She was thinking of getting the entire money to take it back, probably because money wasn't coming in as she had earlier on envisaged. But I feel you have to know, you have to utilize your circles, you have to be exposed, get to know people, get on the internet, get on the Facebook, get on WhatsApp. Circles really, really help If you look at your friends, you'll know that even, for example, the tactic she used for the parts, she just circulated just a sample of what she did, and she managed to get links. She managed to get customers. If we utilize well circles, then even funding or financing, we're able to get persisted.
Thank you, Sylvia. And now to the audience, I would like to take questions from you. Someone please help me pass around a mic. If you have a question directed to someone in specific, please do mention the name as well as your name and organization. I think you can just try to speak loudly.
I have particularly an issue with how we speak about this huge burden that we are reminded of every single time we come in this. Marriage and being able to perform your role in the home as a woman. But when I come to a space like this, I'm looking for information on what skill sets I need to add to myself to become a better entrepreneur. I'm a woman in STEM. I'm a woman in tech. I am building technology for impact. But now my question is, how do I run a profitable business without being reminded of the fact that at the end of the day, I'm going to have to be a mother and juggle all of these things, balance my books? Because for me, at the end of the day, I already know these things. I've been reminded of this since I was 7 years old, 4 years old. This is a daily reminder for me. And I think that when we are having issues with women coming into rooms like this, it's because of things like this, of you're going to be reminded of your role back home. At the end of the day, however successful you are, you're still going to have to serve your husband and your kids. Truth be told, it's overwhelming. When I come into a space like this safe space for me to become a better outside of the family setting. Because you need to learn to separate the family from the business. Yes, the family line affects the business life, but the space is already set for this. And I can go to the spaces that I want to have. We have mentors, we have centers, we have families who are able to support us. So when we're talking about our achievements as women in the business sense, tell me what skills you learn to be able to build a pitch deck that makes this much money. And tend to want to go into spaces where it's both genders or just men, because then I'm getting time for information on how to be aggressive, how to be confident, how to influence myself, and not the whole thing of, in your femininity there also has to be grace to it. No, there's no grace in this. At the end of the day, I'm dealing with, I'm in a space that's dominated by men. Teach me how to be aggressive. So we need to revise how we are speaking to women about business. We need to revise the language we're using with them. We need to revise how we are telling them what we're telling them to prioritize when it comes to the work. For me, this particularly frustrates me because I'm investing time coming here. I want to learn. I want to connect with people. I want to be challenged. And I'm not getting that level of challenge here. And it for me, I'm passionate about it right now. I'm speaking like this because women we have so much to give, so much to give. I'm a woman in tech and I taught myself how to build. Because the spaces that I was in, the school I was in, was not supportive of me being in sciences. My science teachers were always reminding me of the fact that I am going to get married at some point. So I dropped out of school and I taught myself how to do these things. But now I'm of age, I understand all of these things, but when I come into a room like this, consider my need. Consider what I'm lacking as a woman, the things that I'm not taught. Tell me these things.
Tell me how you go about dealing with your accountant. Tell me how you go about hiring the right people to be able to support you to push your business forward. You know, tell me about, you know, how you were able to know that now you are in a space where you can invest, you can approach an investor with this ticket size. These are the conversations that the rooms filled with men are having. But when I come to a room like it of my role in the home, I don't think it is fair.
Wow. Okay, let's take him and then her, and then gentleman in blue. Susan.
Now, I am a family person. My father died when I was in primary 5. My mother was uneducated, but this woman did everything she could, just cooking a few things, boil, color. And one day I saw myself when I was doing my master's in economy, was not there, uneducated woman. All of you here who are women, you're so blessed, you're so lucky. I don't want to narrow this conversation to STEM. You're talking about technology, but my mother was an illiterate woman in the village who never knew English. So the conversation must be extrapolated to touch the lowest woman. When you talked about the barriers to women access to maybe innovation, no problem. But for me, from my roots, I like I said, I have the sisters who of your age and so forth. How can we, you for instance, your innovation hubs, help women down to support their children to go to schools, to aspire for big things? So I would be really happy. I don't think anybody would abuse a woman for talking in English like a Mzungu or anything. No, let's talk about the problems down from the root and how we help these our mothers and our sisters to transcend. You know, women do so much. I found my sister one day, she was just baking pancakes. I asked, how much do you sell? How many do you make? How much do you make in a week? It was little money. But my sister is educating, unfortunately her husband died. She's educating 3 girls, all of them are nurses in nursing school. But and then there is one aspect of vulnerability for all the women in this country. And especially in the village there, every 5 years of political campaigns, everybody goes to these women to deceive them. We will bring this, we will bring this. Nothing. After they elect them, women are left. That huge gap. I say this because my sister, the youngest sister of mine, was a campaign manager for somebody who's now very big in the country. But when she did not have money for about 700 shillings, 1,000, for the girls to go back to school, I saw the vulnerability of women in pure terms. So let's be conversing how best we can pull the common woman from where she is up to a point where we see them smile and raise children with quality education for a brighter future.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Lady in black.
I thank you for the opportunity.
Can you let's make our questions brief and if there's a question at the end, kindly mention the question. Thank you.
Yes, may I have a question immediately? Now, I am an entrepreneur running a mushroom business. I was on social media about a year ago. So my husband lost a job during COVID. Actually, didn't lose, but was arrested off because they have just called him back. So I took all the responsibility. Now he has been called back, and I have to support the time before he starts earning something good. So I had to give him my smartphone to support his things because he's more in that side of smart things. Now I have this challenge. That's why I chose to come to this place. When I saw that making innovation and entrepreneurship work, I said, let me go and see how my small phone can be used in any way so that I can get back on board, because I lost very many customers in that time. So up to now, I'm not yet on social media, though my business still has pages and accounts. I'm not on social media right now, but I would like now to know, how can I also be made to come to that extent? Because in fact, I'm also demoralized in my own way. When I approach somebody, everyone I speak to is sliding stuff. Everyone I speak to is sliding stuff. And someone tells you, can I send you a WhatsApp? Send me an email, send me a WhatsApp, you know? So that thing is also like cutting me short. So I would like to know, how can I also, if there are companies or what that can give smartphones, how can I tap into that so that I can be helped in this critical moment? Because my business has a big eye, but I need goggles to see where I'm going.
Thank you. And over to the gentleman in blue. We shall extend these conversations over tea, so this will be our last question. Feel free to engage with the panelists as after the panel.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm called Hannington. I have an enterprise called Omega Healthcare. I'm here not by mistake, because I'm a man who has a very big heart for women. I have 4 questions. Actually 3. The last one is echoing on your colleague's point. The first question goes to Dr. Chichoncho. Won't it be better for us to be talking of empowering or skilling men, or skilling women and the men? It is the money coming to harvest and sell to use. Don't we need both to be skilled and empowered? That is the origin of that question. 2. What are you, the 4 of you? The 4 panelists, what are you doing about the following missing links identified as it concerns the women's enterprises? I would like to hear loud and clear from you. A, limited investment in innovations for women or girls. What are you doing about it? 2, gender blind approach to innovations. What are you doing about that? 3, underrepresentation of women and innovators and entrepreneurs. What are you doing about that? The 3rd question is, can we talk of benefits women? To me, those must go together. It may be a man's innovation, but it benefits women. To me, they should go together. So the last point I say is I'm echoing on my colleague's point. I know, Matthias, even the ecosystem builders are talking of women. You, the panelists, you won't be talking of women. You are focused on the city or town women. What of dirty woman down there at the grassroots level? You may not even have any idea. Don't you also want to get them out of that situation? Thank you very much.
Thank you. And in 2 minutes per panelist, please comment on the questions you'd like to comment on, but also give your closing remarks. Thank you.
First, I'd like to address what you said, just regarding your frustration around the experiences that female entrepreneurs and people in entrepreneurship who are not male share. Very recently, I think there was a hashtag on Twitter where there were groups of women who were saying, we are over-mentored, can we just get funding, right? So I hear you. I know the path of an entrepreneur is difficult. I know that it looks different for different profiles. And I do know that we can also find spaces where those specific issues for you are addressed. But also respecting that each entrepreneur has a different lived experience. So it might not always appeal to you, but it does not water down what that entrepreneurial experience is. So I'm happy to engage, further outside of this space. To the 4 questions, I hope I'm still within 2 minutes. So I work with the Innovation Village, still a bit new, but I'd like to just share a few initiatives that we have in place or that we are working to develop for women, and not just women in Kampala, but women across all areas. We have teams that sit across, I think, the 4 regions, but who also go further out to meet the entrepreneurs on ground, the females who are, building and innovating even without smartphones, who have needs just like any other entrepreneur in Kampala. So one of this is a movement that we call Her Motive, which is a community for female entrepreneurs. So we are going out, reaching them, understanding what their needs are, and then coming back and developing solutions for them, or innovations, or approaches that can better support them to continue innovating and not give up on entrepreneurship, because we understand that their needs are different, and that we need to continue just keeping a pulse on this so that we can live up to our promise. Outside of that, we also have Motive, which is something that you might have heard about, that focuses on creatives within Uganda and the needs that they have, because we know creatives are often ignored or not supported as efficiently. Once again, thinking about funding, thinking about the upskilling that they need, thinking about the market accesses that they need to access. And so we are doing a lot of work to reach, but also to support where the need lies most. And I'm happy to engage further after this.
Okay. All right. I'm just going to answer hers. In a scenario like she has no smartphone, but she does have a future phone. I would say that if you could map out your community, especially where you can supply the mushrooms, and then get contacts of those clients. Load some airtime, thank God their packer lasts, all that you can load, and then call your clients and deliver, or they can always pick up. That way it will help you, have a one-on-one conversation. Even you don't need a smartphone as such when you're starting out, usually. As long as you know what your focus is, it's very easy for you to connect. Just pick up the the numbers. Once you have the numbers, it's very easy for you to connect with them. And then the gentleman who talked about inclusiveness of even people down in places like Karamoja, where I come from, I agree with him. Last week we were talking about with We Two Women in Technology that, not everyone has the opportunity down there, and yet they're out there doing businesses that could actually thrive. I think this goes back to the policies that have been set. And
And as much as it seems like it could be very far to reach out or till when that can be implemented, I think it starts with you. What are you doing? If you're doing something with them, that is already a step ahead. So it comes back to us, what can we do? Personally, I am trying with Wabibi to see that we skill these women to learn what we know. Because I also don't have the education that would, create rocket sciences and all that. But the aggressiveness that my sister has been talking about is what has really brought me to do what I'm doing today. And that is what we always tell other women, that when you've come out into this world of business, be resilient. Have passion for what you're doing. Like one of the panelists was saying that most cases people get into things because so-and-so is doing. So they miss out the mark from there. So I would say that as long as they have the passion within them, creating, today we have women associations. That's the start point. But it's very disappointing because, if they do not have, again, the leadership of men, because we know that still men are leads, they have some bit of power in saying something, in decision making, because they have their other side of the story. Otherwise, we'll never understand why they're failing while they're eating on what a woman's sweat has brought onto the table if they're not involved. Yeah? So I think, so I don't know, but that is how I would really approach that. Maybe my my sisters could.
I'd like to thank you for the questions, very insightful. I'd like to start with her concern. That's where I base most of my discourse from. You cannot separate a woman from her social norms. You cannot separate a woman entrepreneur from her social norms. They are there, they must be addressed, and we must take note that these affect, as you rightly said, they do affect her ability to perform, or to innovate, or to create, or whatever it is that you're trying to do in this space. It is very, very difficult to separate the two. Once we need to rethink and reimagine a woman outside that space, outside the social norms, the social expectations. We must be mothers, we must be wives, we must cater for all the needs of the man in the household, and so forth and so on. It is a new way of thinking, and I encourage you to take it up, because most of us do not think that way. We do think all these must be brought to the table, and we must take into consideration the factors in the ecosystem that make women entrepreneurship work. And being a mother, being a wife is part of that ecosystem. To the gentleman who asked me about men, yes, men must be part of the conversation. I recall once I talked to women who were talking about domestic violence in their homes, and I told them, you have to be the change that you want to see. You have young sons. You have young sons in your households. Train these sons to be the husbands you would want your husband to be. If you want your husband to be part of the decision making in your life, or you want to be part of the decision making in your husband's life, train your son to do that. Let your son see by association the way you behave in the house. In that way, you will be able to speak to the adulthood of your son or the men that we see in this room. I am very happy to see men in this room, by the way. Thank you for supporting and being curious about women entrepreneurship. At so many levels, we must bring men to the table. They are key stakeholders in women entrepreneurship. Once, however, the Baganda have a saying, I am not a Muganda, but the Baganda have a saying about kachama. Who's a Muganda who can help me? Akachama mamera. Well, I think it speaks to once somebody has reached a certain threshold in terms of age, it's very difficult to change their character. So the men we marry or the men that become husbands, bachama, if I'm saying it right, bachama, but there are those that can be molded, and those are our sons. So mold your sons to be what you would want your husband to be. And perhaps in future, your son can have positive impact in that household. There might be no domestic violence. We don't need to go into conversations of bring the woman into the conversation of decision making, how to use the finances, how to take care of this, how to take care of that. So change takes time, but it can happen. And the men are important in this change that we want to see. For the gentleman, about the women, yes, I am very passionate about the women in the rural areas. We are doing a lot of work in that. The ministry, I think, has partnered with MasterCard Foundation, and they are going to create, 300,000 jobs, and 70% of those jobs must belong to women. So we are doing everything we can using impact sourcing and everything we can to make sure that the women are represented and they can come into the formal labor market, but also at the same time become represented in self-employment, entrepreneurship, and innovation space. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. And lastly, Sylvia, in 2 minutes.
Okay, I'll respond to his concerns on having initiatives that are also benefiting the men, the women, and also those benefiting the rural, to see how they incorporated in the tech. As Centenary Technology Services, we're under Centenary Group. I know most of you know Centenary Bank, but we're all subsidiaries under Centenary Group, as transforming the country in terms of technology and financial and economic ways. So we have different initiatives where we're working with different partners, Ministry of ICT, we have UNCDF, we also have Innovation Village, we have UNDP. And some of these initiatives, I would say, we have the Farmers Hub. Farmers Hub is going to be like a solution that is going to be addressing the entire value chain of the agriculture sector. We know a farmer's life, whether male or female, you have a life, you have education, you have to feed the children, you have to take children to school, you need insurance for your products, you need health care for yourself, like the entire lifestyle. So this application is going to benefit the entire country. Looking at the statistics of women, we're looking forward to having more of 60% of women having benefited from this initiative to be beneficial to the entire country. This is one of them is the Digital Uganda Vision. We are looking at how the digital transformation roadmap and some of the strategies that are going to fit in there, because we know there are so many underlying challenges as to why women are not empowered, are not skilled, and there are already programs that are running. So we are looking at addressing all those underlying problems, underlying challenges, and see how we can empower not only men, but also women to benefit from all these programs.
Thank you very much. A round of applause for our panelists for the day. Thank you for making the time. Please feel free to extend these conversations over tea.
So thank you all for coming. We have a closing ceremony happening upstairs. Please head up there and join that beautiful production that's happening right now. The lady that was asking about the smartphones, if you could get in touch, I want to see how to support you to that end. Thank you so much, our panelists. Enjoy the evening. Thanks.